Garvey was bemoaning the indigenous British people who have commented on his videos. It's a cocktail of a rant, a whine, and an explanation of his intentions. I'll just read the pertinent points, the points that are pertinent to this discussion. It's been a couple of weeks since the racism debate with Tommy Robinson, and I've come to the conclusion that many white people are only comfortable with a certain type of black person. On the third paragraph, he writes, "I am about building up the socio-economic condition of black people." In the last paragraph, near the end, "My concern is black socio-economic development. It would be better if you understood the reason for the socio-economic division we have, rather than crying about your disappointment in me speaking about it." I want to pull him up on the first part. He talks about, quote and unquote, many white people wanting a certain type of black person, aka alternatively known as tokens or folks who fit the mold of what the master at the table wants. Let's be clear here. It appears that he's talking about Tommy fans rather than general ethnic Brits. It's the Tommy fans who subscribed to him after his first interview with Tommy a couple of years ago, and they're the ones who followed his channel in the recent debate with Mr. Robinson over the BLM rant. So that group are most likely the types that he's talking about, because they're most likely to have commented on his videos. It looks like the Tommy crew, the Tommy fans, are clicking onto the fact that Garvey is not exactly a John Lawrence type. Did Mr. Garvey really think any of them, the Tommy camp, were interested in his views? Or were they simply interested in him as a token for the Tommy camp in their Zio agenda targeting Muslims? Mr. Garvey allowed himself back then to be part of that Zio CIVNAT vehicle, but he is right about something here. He's right that tokens have to be of a certain type. They've got to toe a certain line. They've got to dance to a certain tune. Those tunes and lines are set by the masters at the table. Mr. Garvey is not a master at the table. Mr. Garvey was knowingly or unknowingly a token in the Tommy Zio CIVNAT movement back then. Do any of you recall Mr. Garvey making a big meal about Tommy Robinson using the terms our history and our identity?
It's all about our country, our history, our culture, our identity. I expect you to be in London next Saturday.
Our history, our culture, our identity. He says he said to me in our interview, he is not a nationalist along the lines of race. But when he says our history, our culture, our identity, I don't think he's talking about me and you, people. Who's the our? Our. Who is the our?
As this was not inclusive of them, and it just appealed to an ethnic constituency, ethnic Brits, not people like Mr. Garvey. These two gentlemen, Big Bro and Mr. Garvey, must have very short memories. If this is a problem for them, then why was the Martin Sellner speech not an issue for them? They even helped facilitate that speech to be read by Mr. Robinson. He read Martin Sellner's speech, Martin Sellner being an ethno-nationalist whose only concern is Europeans. But that's not all, because the contents of the speech excluded folks like Big Bro and Mr. Garvey.
People of the UK, remember who you are. Remember your Remember your glorious past. You are the sons and daughters of knights, of kings, of explorers, philosophers and artists. Who is the sovereign in this country? It's you, the people. You, the silent and invisible majority who said no during Brexit. You can say no again. No to Islamisation. No to mass immigration. And no to the Great Replacement.
Mr. Robinson read Mr. Sellner's speech, which addressed sons of knights, sons of kings, sons of explorers, sons of philosophers, and sons of artists. It encouraged them all to oppose the Great Replacement. I do not believe Mr. Sellner had anybody like Mr. Garvey in mind when he was penning that speech. Let's be clear here, I don't think anybody believes Mr. Garvey was in mind at that time. I also doubt Mr. Garvey or his colleague Big Bro truly believe they're being addressed as sons of explorers, knights and what have you. Maybe Sarah Garvey did not notice, or maybe he was just accepting his role back then. He knew back then his role was a token bit part player. Given Mr. Garvey's latest comment about the Brits who follow him, he must have had a wake-up call about the Tommy crowd. Perhaps in part that wake-up call was from Tommy's new token. Tommy's new token asked Mr. Garvey essentially a question Tommy would never have ever asked. The question is too sensitive and too controversial for somebody like Mr. Robinson to ask. In this day and age of PC culture, a token can get away with asking a question which, reading between the lines, is screaming, "Why don't you go back home?"
So, yeah, black racism is a thing. I think many black people, I don't have proportions, but many black people are racist towards whites. In terms of my question, as a black nationalist, would you not prefer to locate yourself in a majority black country instead of a majority white country?
And I don't see why black people can't do the exact same thing while they're here. So you understand that you're black and you use this system, and you do what you can, you get what you can out of this system, and you build yourself up. And I don't see the problem with that. I don't see because what it basically sounds like to me is that, why don't you back off back to where you come from? That's what it sounds to me, is what you're saying, basically. That's basically what it sounds to me, but a little bit more articulate, basically. Calm down.
I wonder if Mr. Garvey looks at that token and thinks, that's what the Tommy fans wanted to mould him into. Maybe he thinks he's had a close escape, a fortuitous escape. Mr. Garvey may fare better. I actually believe he will fare better in talking with true ethno-nationalists, real nationalists, rather than Zio-civic nationalists, as real ethno-nationalists, or real nationalists rather, are less likely to ask him to conform to a certain token type.